North Korean leader Kim Jong Un continuing his trip through Russia with FaceTime, more FaceTime with President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Putin welcomed Kim outside the enhanced entrance of a launch vehicle assembly building. Upon arrival, Kim pledged his North Korea's full and unconditional support to defend Russia's interests. Russian state media says the two met for about 5 hours. Putin is calling their first day together highly productive. But what could one really make of a highly productive day between those authoritarian leaders? Here to break it down for us is our friend of the stream, Dr. Dick Farkas. Doctor, thank you for joining us again. Let's get right to it. The love between the two, between Russia and North Korea, continues. Mr. Kim saying Russia will try and will win the war in Ukraine and punish the evil forces as they work out a possible arms deal. This Russia and North Korea working on an arms deal. The evil forces, of course, being the U.S., the United States, our allies in Ukraine. What should everyday folks make of this? Should we actually be worried, or is this a time to be aware, or is this dictatorial rhetoric?
Yeah, I think Un's rhetoric should be viewed as not consequential. I don't think we're talking about anything that he can do apart from jump up and down and make people uncomfortable. You know, you guys just did a short segment on flying ants and concluded that they're irksome but not harmful. I think that's a pretty good characterization of Kim Jong Un. The truth is, he's a master at maneuvering at-risk leaders. And you remember he did that with President Trump. And very little, if anything, of consequence came of those meetings and those weeks of concern and focus that we put on those meetings. I think the same thing is going to be true of the Putin meeting.
Fascinating analogy, analogizing Un with the pesky flying ants in Evergreen Park. I didn't think I'd hear that. It was such a bizarre scene as it played out yesterday, talking about, you know, the North Korean leader, his train crossing into Russian territory. Question 2 here. So all of this is happening as 10 cruise missiles were supposedly launched at a Russian shipyard. Russia says Ukraine did it. The shipyard is in the highly coveted and disputed Crimea. Could this be seen as a Ukrainian move to distract from the talks, derail the talks, show their own show of force?
Well, you know, the only reason that Crimea is significant at all for either the Russians or the Ukrainians has to do with the port of Sevastopol. That's a port with 11 bays and over 800 naval ships. Ironically, ships that are both in the Russian and Ukrainian Navy simultaneously. The Crimea is not significant except for that strategic element. And I think the Ukrainians are trying to make a statement. They're trying to signal that they are not prepared to concede or to negotiate anything about the ultimate national association, the sovereignty, the integrity of the Crimea.
Interesting. Also reading this headline today, I want to reference it for you in this article. It says the UN says Russia employs torture, that, quote, torture perpetrated by Russian officers against Ukrainian civilians and prisoners of war has reached what is clearly now deemed systemic, this by the UN, accounts of rape and more. What is this war in Ukraine devolving into?
Well, that's not news. The European Court of Human Rights, I understand, has 160 already filed cases of torture and human abuse, violations of human rights already on their docket. So this is a very well documented proposition. The problem really from the Russians' perspective is that they don't have the capacity to discipline their officers in the field. The discipline's broken down very significantly. It's reflected in the lack of communication discipline. That is to say, you know, people using cell phones and our intelligence people able to geolocate where we find people and military units. The military in Russia has very fundamental problems, and that was one of the things that Prigozhin was complaining about to the leadership in the Kremlin.
Last question for you here. Another headline is that the merchant of death. Remember, we traded, got Brittany Griner, the WNBA star, and gave away this Russian arms merchant of death. Now he's running for political office. There's his picture right there behind bars. Running for political office in Russia. I mean, what? You're a Russia expert. What?
One of the most significant things I can draw from that is that one of the least effective ways to engage in effective business is to run for political office.
Yeah, that's true.
In Russia, he's likely to minimize his role of any significant sort. Remember, he depended a lot on the oligarchs to provide money to engage in global kinds of arms trade. Mm-hmm. And now that he's highly visible, that's a business in which you have to remain somewhat invisible. Mm-hmm. So now that he's visible, he's cut off from funds, and he's actually going to have the scrutiny of a politician. He's likely to be quite insignificant.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. That's good to know. Dr. Dick Farkas, professor of political science at DePaul University. Thank you for keeping up on some geopolitical issues that we should, of course, be aware of as the war rages on in Ukraine. Dr. Farkas, we thank you for your time, as always, and your insight.